Welcome, Lynn. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Mango and Peppercorns, a memoir of food, an unlikely family, and the American dream.
Thank you for having me on. This is such an honor.
As I was just mentioning with you, you co-wrote this with your mother, Tung. I probably won't pronounce it right. How do you pronounce her last name? Nguyen?
We pronounce it Nguyen. It's like
Nguyen.
Wein.
Okay.
Yeah.
Catherine Manning, who you call Kathy, yourself,
Yeah.
and then with Elisa Ung, who it sounds like helped orchestrate and do interviews and things like that, correct?
That's right. That's right.
Um,
Yes.
anyway, and as I was reading it, as I said, I wasn't sure who I was interviewing, but I was just like so thrilled to talk to one of you from this book because what a story. Oh my gosh. I cannot even believe it. The things that happen with your mom. Why don't you start by, if you don't mind, telling listeners a little about what this book is sort of broadly about. And then we'll dive into your family history and everything.
Sure, sure. So Mango and Peppercorns, from my perspective, is really a story about my mother, who is a Vietnamese refugee who came over during the Vietnam War, and Kathy, who is an American who resettled her. And I think throughout the book, the most interesting thing is that they were really able to create a very unique family and community brought together by food. And I think that that transcends anybody's story because as we eat, especially during COVID, you find that food brings people together. It allows you to savor flavors. It allows you to have new experiences. And so Mango and Peppercorns really tells their story through food.
I'm a pretty picky eater, I have to say, to the disappointment of my husband. But with all these recipes and descriptions of food, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to try all of these. I mean, I always love when books include recipes because it just like adds another element of interest and everything. But before I read the book, when I flipped through it, I was like, well, I don't know if I would eat this. And then after I read the book, I was like, okay, well now after this flavorful description, I have to do it. But
That's
of course, the
awesome.
food in this book was sort of a means to an end, right? This is sort of, in fact, the means to an end of survival, really, for your mom and where she started. There was one part of the book, and I don't
That's
have the exact quote in front of me, but she talked about how she never even thought about like being someone who lived in a big house and had this, that, or the other thing. It was about survival. It was just about like getting through that day and what did they need to do to get through the
that's
day.
right.
Or maybe was it her mom who said that? Maybe it was your grandmother who said that. Someone's, do you remember what I'm talking
Well,
about?
yeah, I do. And you know what? It's really my mom's perspective. Like she's very much a survivalist and she's very much of a put one foot in front of the other. And, even if today is a bad day, you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to just keep fighting. And, if you think about like, I as an adult now have such a better appreciation of her, but like I go to a grocery store in a foreign country and I can't like figure my way through the aisles. I can't read the packages. And to think about her being dropped into the United States without any family, without knowing the language, and then surviving and having a restaurant that people flock to, I think really speaks a lot to kind of her perseverance. And also, like she spoke through her food, like that was her way of communicating. And so I really, I admire her resilience in terms of being able to like wake up each day and just fight for a new day.
And it's also a story about running a business, right? This is also, there's this element of how to make a business that depends on a creative product, right? Something that's a service to others. How do you continue to transform it, produce it, monetize it, and how she did that over and get press and do all these things. I mean, it's also like a business primer, if you will, with her and Kathy, how they split ways at one point, how they came back together. Like the whole story was fascinating. And even the fact that they fought all the time. And that was just like
And
their
still do.
way of communicating. And they're like, don't worry about it. And yet the restaurant became Hai Vong. Did I pronounce that right? Hai Vong?
Yes, you
Okay.
did.
So Hai Vong became this like complete top of the restaurant charts Miami sort of institution, despite barely having air conditioning, and like them building their own walls and everything. It's amazing. It's really amazing story.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun to write. And for me, so originally, many, many years ago, I said to my mom, I want to write a book. And originally, it was really just a pet project for me because my mother would never share her stories with me. It was always too painful, too much to talk about. It was always about looking forward, right? We're here today. Where are we going tomorrow? And I, as an adult, really wanted to understand a lot more about her and her background and what she came from. And so that has been so much fun for me because I learned so much about her. I learned about my family, and so it's just been a great journey.
And you said in the book you didn't even learn about your dad and exactly how that whole situation happened until you read it in the book. Is that
That's
true? That's
true.
crazy. Oh my gosh.
Yes, yeah, that was probably the biggest shock from the entire experience is, finding out that who was my dad wasn't really who I thought it was. And a lot of those trips that we made to find him, so to speak, were like veils of different agendas. So,
Wow. I don't remember. Is your dad still alive? Do you know?
so I've never tried to reach out or find him.
Yeah.
It's like a history that is kind of reimagined now, so to speak, and
Yeah.
ignored. And to be honest, a lot of people say, "Well, do you wish you did meet your dad or know about him?" And I am so lucky that I was raised by Kathy and my mom, and even Kathy's mother, who I consider my grandmother. And so I had a complete family unit in my eyes and in my perspective. And they raised me, in their perspective, which is a strong woman who is independent. And so I never felt like I had a hole that needed to be filled. And I think I'm very lucky in that. So it hasn't been something that I've looked to do is find. I honestly wouldn't even know
Yeah.
how.
Me neither. After, I
So
mean, that's, yeah, not too much to go on there.
yeah.
Uh, but no, I mean, that's another element of the story that was so interesting is how your mom and Kathy had this platonic, lifelong cohabitation relationship where they co-parented you, and yet, Kathy writes in the book, she just sort of decided to be celibate at one point, and that
Right.
and your mom had a series of different, husbands or relationships and whatever, and yet it just worked. It worked for them, and they like Kathy had you like strapped on her back in the restaurant. That's so cute. Oh my gosh. Um,
It's
and
it's true.
then he's the one who, when you were like finishing high school, suggested that you apply to Harvard, which by the way, when I read in the book, I was like, why is she even suggesting that? And then the next page is like, and then I got in. I was like, what? Like, your guidance counselor was like, forget it, don't even go to college or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah, she's always been my champion. And she's always been, dream big, shoot for the stars, nothing can stop you. And I think that like the my mom, who is a very, very practical person, and then Kathy, who's like this huge dreamer, they really balanced each other out. But yeah, Kathy's always been such a supporter. And I never, like, she is in many ways my second mom, but growing up I never thought of her like that. Like, it was my mom was always my mom, and Kathy was always like this fun aunt who I could talk to and would take me out. Um, and that just really worked in terms of they knew their places, in terms of their relationship to me, but also their relationship to each other. And I think it speaks a lot for Kathy in terms of how she always stood by my mom, and yet let her grow and evolve and be her own person. So they're remarkable women. I'm not sure that I could do half of what they've done, but they're certainly great role models.
Well, I think part of it is what you said originally about your mom's whole outlook, which is something that I feel like all the whole wellness industry is trying to get people to do. Like think about where you are today, like be where your feet are, look, focus now. Do you know what I mean? And like that's sort of what she does, and always seeing the bright side. There was this one passage at the beginning about her grandmother, who your mom was super close to. I just want to
Mhm.
read this one passage. Remembering Ba Noi's voice kept me going. It always had. When I was 3 and stricken with smallpox, my parents were unable to afford medicine. It was Ba Now, is that how you pronounce it? Ba Noi?
Hanoi, yeah.
Ba Noi, who laid me on the dirt floor of her hut and nursed me back to health. As I grew up, always following her around like a baby duck, she looked at my face full of smallpox scars, not in horror, as so many others did, but like I was the most beautiful person she had ever seen. When we had only a few grains of rice to eat, Ba Noi taught me to thank God for salt. Rice was just rice, she told me, but if you have rice and salt, you have a meal.
That's true.
What an attitude. Like, it's just amazing. Just,
it, it's being thankful for every day and such little things, like even my mom today, when we eat rice, and rice you can go to the store and buy at any time, and it's one of the cheapest things to get. But even if there's a cup of rice left over, she saves it. And it's, because you just don't know where the next meal is going to come from. And that's, growing up, a cup of rice was the most precious thing that they could have. But even with that, and the poverty that she lived in, right? Like she lived in a one room hut, and like I went back to Vietnam, and I happened to see a house that was very similar to what she grew up in, and it's probably the same size as her bedroom today. It's, it's so tiny, dirt floor, and still she grew up so happy because they were always so thankful for what they had that day. And and she would say that even when they were working long hours in the fields, everybody would sing and tell jokes. And so it was really about embracing your community, and just being thankful that, what, you woke up this morning and you have a chance to fight for another day.
I mean, that is such a great message. It's such a great message. And I wonder how sort of your mom's parenting of you, because you make some mentions of it, how like you didn't really want to work in the restaurant so much and you wanted to be with your friends. You're kind of embarrassed, like every teenager is of their parents at some point. And, you preferred spaghetti and meatballs or something to their food for a while, because their attitude is it's so amazing. But I feel like it's sort of counter to the way most American sort of, well, maybe I shouldn't say, I mean, it's such a mass generalization, but sort of the general sort of zeitgeist societal messaging in here, right? I mean, it's just a little bit different. I mean, the fact that like by age 8, she was doing, farming and building a house for her parents soon after and all these things. And I'm like, I have an 8-year-old, like an almost 8-year-old. That is not what is happening around here. It's like, can I have a seltzer? And I'm like, oh my gosh, look what Tongue was doing. So tell me a little bit about that and sort of growing up, you as an American with an immigrant mother, and how the differences sort of played out.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing that got instilled in me is hard work. Like you just are always working. And like a lot of people say, well, how can you run a business and then you come home and you have these other projects, but it's just this constant, and I enjoy it. Right. So it's like you're always trying to better yourself. You're always trying to move yourself forward incrementally. And you wake up, and it could be reading a book, and that's enjoyment, but it's not that you're just being quote unquote lazy, right? So it's very much a hard work ethic, and also being like, so I own a business, and it's ups and downs, and it's not and it's a roller coaster, and you certainly don't plan life the way it happens. um, and you kind of roll with it and you say, okay, so how can I take what I have today and make it better tomorrow? And I think that that persistence and just that work ethic of showing up every day was really deeply, deeply instilled in me. Because, you know, even after I would be picked up from school when I was very, very little, I would go to the restaurant and I would help peel carrots or I would help set tables. And that's just, you know, that's just what we did. And the funny thing is, that's what we did as a family. You know, some families take vacations and, you know, my family worked together. So it's, you know, it's all about how you as a family unit celebrate yourselves. It doesn't have to be like every other family. And I think that's another thing that got very deeply instilled in me, and I see it especially now as I'm developing more and more of my own friends, is you don't have to be like everybody else. And it's okay. And it's actually really good to have your own path and make your own choices. And, you know, you don't have to, your family doesn't have to look like the family next door, and your job doesn't have to be like the neighbors or your colleagues. And sometimes that's hard because, you know, I, like I'm sure everybody else, compares myself to other people. And so, and being like, okay, this is me and I'm okay with that. I'm not the doctor, I'm not the lawyer. And I think especially today when people have so many opportunities with what they can make of their own lives and where their path can go, it's really important to have that inner strength to say, you know what, I can do what I choose, and to stick with it and have that persistence to know that, you know what, it's going to be okay even if today is not.
And so I know you run a business, but like what this is none of my business and you don't have to answer, but like, do you have your own family? Like where do you live? Are you still close? Do you spend a lot of time with your mom and Kathy still? Like what's the postscript on the book for you?
Yeah, sure. So I live in Boynton Beach, Florida right now. It's about an hour north of my parents. So it's close, but it's not too close. And really that was driven by the pandemic and traffic. So where they live, it's very congested, and I wanted to be in a little bit of a more rural area. And I live with my boyfriend right now. And so we, you know, we lived in New York, and then with the pandemic last year, like many people, we kind of fled. So we bought a house in Boynton Beach where we could have a little bit more space. So, but before that, I was traveling about 2 weeks every month. So I was always on the go. And it actually enabled me to see my parents a bit more than I can now, because when I would travel, I would always make sure to do like a stopover in between trips. But now, because of COVID, we're just being a bit careful. So I'm getting my second shot tomorrow. Yay!
Yay!
And so I'm hoping then we can see each other a little bit more. But I've tried to be careful because of, you know, they're a little older.
I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Um, well, so now in addition to everything else, all of you guys are now authors, right? I mean,
Yes.
just to add another feather in your cap. How does it, do you think, like, how is it having your story out there? I mean, I know it's just coming out, but
Yeah.
like, how does it feel to take something so like that it's so such a part of you and having it be so public, and for them too, I would imagine, like, your mom thinks this is, like, such a trip. I mean, what right? Like,
Yeah. So they're loving it. So for different reasons. So Kathy loves being able to tell her story and interact with other people and really have a chance to, you know, celebrate what they've worked for. For my mom, it's all been a bit of a head rush. You know, she couldn't, so first she couldn't believe that, you know, people would even find her story interesting enough to have a book. And even through that process, she didn't fully grasp that this was a book that was going to be published and read by other people. She just thought, oh, Lynn's, got this crazy idea and we're writing this thing and it's, gonna sit in her bookshelf or something like that. But then it's been published and we've been so fortunate to have had such good reviews. And people have really been attracted to the book. And now it's that next phase of, I can't believe people actually like the book. And that's been wonderful for her. It's given her that additional confidence and that additional sort of like accolade that I really wanted her to experience, because they worked so hard. Like, the restaurant business is one of the hardest around. And to do it for so many years, and to love it for so many years, and the community they built. Like, I'm just so happy that they're now getting that recognition and the accolades that I really wanted them to have.
And by the way, what did happen to the restaurant this past year?
So we transitioned to doing pickups. And so we schedule the pickup and people can order 10 days in advance, and it sells out in about 2 to 3 hours. And so we've been lucky, our customers just kept following us and, still coming to eat our food. But it's, like many businesses, it's changed its shape, so to speak. We're doing the South Beach Wine and Food Festival, a private dinner coming up in May. And then Kathy and my mom actually want to do book tours. So they want to go to book festivals and do some special cooking classes, and really just have fun now with the whole experience.
Oh my gosh, if they want to come to New York and do a cooking demonstration in my house or something, I will invite like all these people. And I used to do author salons and everything here.
Oh,
And I
wow.
feel like life is just starting to get back to normal. My kitchen is not such a huge, I mean, it's like a normal, anyway, I couldn't
Sure.
fit like a million people in the kitchen. It's not like a professional kitchen, but
Sure.
anyway, if they want to come to New York and do that as a stop, let me know, because I would be so honored to have them cook here. Oh my gosh. So,
They would love it. They would love it.
all right.
I will let them know.
I'm not kidding. I mean, I mean that sincerely. So think about it.
Okay, good.
It would be amazing.
Because they love doing that.
Oh,
They
good.
love cooking for people and feeding people. That's the biggest thing, is feeding people.
No, we could do like a whole talk and then a meal, and oh my gosh, it would be so fun. Awesome. Okay, so what advice would you have to aspiring authors?
I would say so it took us many years to get this book off the ground, mainly because I had to convince my mom that it was something to do. And so there's two pieces of advice that I would have for authors. The first is, use your network. We were fortunate that we had a friend who had published books and was able to introduce us to agents and publishers. So don't be afraid to ask your friends, and who you don't know who's going to point you into a direction that turns into something. And then the other is, believe in your dream and don't give up. It's, just because it doesn't happen tomorrow, that doesn't mean it's not going to happen in a year or 2 years. So keep persistent in your dream.
Love it. Sorry, my dog is wandering
I
around
know.
here. Sorry. She's like my seeing eye dog. She follows me everywhere. It's so cute. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Well, Lynn, thank you. It was so nice to meet you. I'm so impressed by the story and the book and the whole thing. And, bravo to all of you. And I hope that our paths cross and, hopefully in my apartment.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much.
All right.
Zibby. Really
Congratulations.
appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.